his neck for nearly 9 minutes as he called out, "I can't breathe." That week, hundreds of residents of Detroit and the metro area joined thousands of demonstrators across the country in exercising their First Amendment right to publicly protest such displays of police brutality which is disproportionately deployed against Black people in the United States. Demonstrations have been ongoing since May 29, 2020 in Detroit. The demonstrations are not just about George Floyd. They are about Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery. They are about Ayanna Stanley Jones and Tamir Rice. They are about fighting for a world where people, specifically Black and brown people in underserved and neglected communities, can live safely and peacefully, free of police terror. Detroit Will Breathe formed to organize and fight for this better world. Over the past 3 months, the city of Detroit has made it clear how they feel about this movement. Beginning May 29th, Detroit police have continuously responded to our clients' exercise of their First Amendment rights with coordinated displays of excessive and unjustified violence. With the express approval of Mayor Duggan and Chief Craig, Detroit police officers have brutally beaten, tear gassed, pepper sprayed, and arrested hundreds of nonviolent demonstrators, including the plaintiffs in this lawsuit. As the demonstrations continued, the defendants have escalated their brutality accordingly. Detroit police fractured Iman Saleh's hip. They shot Amy Nahabedian with a rubber bullet. They placed Nakia Wallace in a potentially deadly chokehold. They beat Lauren Brennan over the head with their batons. They caused ongoing hearing damage to Lauren Rosen with an LRAD sound cannon and nerve damage to Zachary Kolodziej's hands with overtight zip ties. They ran into Jay Bass with a police SUV. Last Saturday, attendees of Detroit Will Breathe's peaceful gathering were reading books, playing music, dancing, painting, and blowing bubbles when officers in riot gear attacked them. Detroit police broke Alex Anest's rib and collapsed his lung. He joins us today just a few days out of the hospital. They pepper sprayed Kaylee Arnold directly in the face after handcuffing, detaining, and holding her down. They have targeted medics and legal observers for injury and arrest, as well as the press and bystanders. And those are just some examples of the obscene and unnecessary violence consistently inflicted upon these brave young people. The lawsuit we filed today alleges that Detroit police have violated our clients' constitutional rights under the First Amendment to be free from excessive police force and unlawful arrest under the Fourth Amendment, and to be free from retaliation for conveying a message of racial justice under 42 U.S.C. Section 1981. The city, through DPD, has made it clear that they use such tactics as a matter of policy, and that they will continue to attack these demonstrators if the court does not intervene. We are asking the court to put an immediate stop to this rampant violence so that demonstrators can safely continue to exercise their right to organize, protest, and fight for a better world. Our clients would also like to share some of their stories with you all. But first, my co-counsel Jack Schultz is going to say a few words.
Thank you, Amanda. She covered a lot, but I'd like to add a few things. First off, we're not here today as an as a first act. We're here as a last resort against the abuse that the city and its police force has waged against individuals for exercising their First Amendment rights. The people behind me and many more that aren't here today have taken up to the streets to protest and to stand up for equality and equal rights under the law for our Black citizens, and to stand up against police abuse disproportionately against Black citizens. Now, rather than entertain that message, the city has met it with violence, brutality, and arrests. Now, they weren't arresting as a matter of first resort. The last few incidences, August 22nd, most notably, they came in baton swinging rather than trying to arrest people. You know, I was told by a great mentor of mine that anything great is going to be difficult, but the difficulty is what makes it great. And here today, we are standing because the city and its police force has to know that they can't just simply beat its citizens for using their voice without repercussion, without at least having to explain its actions. And that's what we're here today to do. And so I've taken enough of your time in regards to my comments. I'm just an attorney. I'd like to move the mic on. Bill, would you like to say something?
Well, just briefly, my name is Bill Goodman. I'm a civil rights lawyer here in Detroit, and I've been doing this kind of work for well over 50 years, as a matter of fact. So, with that perspective, I can say this. As one example of the kind of work that I've been involved in the early 70s, somewhere between 1972 and 1974, we filed a lawsuit against the Detroit Police Department unit known as STRESS, Stop the Robberies, Enjoy Safe Streets. And that was a unit which had literally killed dozens of unarmed black men as they were fleeing or running away unnecessarily. And there were huge protests over this. Those protests went on unencumbered, and they were vibrant and important. And in the end, that was what stopped the STRESS unit in the Detroit Police Department. I have never, in the decades over which I've been practicing law, never seen this department go out to literally silence speech and protest which involves the police department itself. It's naked, it's blatant, and it has to be stopped. That's all I have to say.
Hello everyone, can you hear me? Great. My name is Kaylee Arnold. I'll spell that for you. It's C-A-Y-L-E-E, and Arnold is A-R-N-O-L-D. I was present at the occupation that took place last weekend, from Saturday evening, August 22nd, through early Sunday morning, August 23rd. And I'm also a plaintiff in this lawsuit. If you've seen any of the photos taken by Adam Dewey that were posted in the Metro Times, I'm the individual being pepper sprayed in the face while the police officers hold me on the ground. When the occupation began, music played, people were freestyling on the microphones, bubbles were floating up into the sky, there was dancing, there was laughter, and it was beautiful. Needless to say, the night ended in terror. Without any discernible calls to disband, Detroit police officers lined up in full riot gear across from protesters. As DPD began their terrifying advance, beating their shields, Detroit Will Breathe began to chant, "We don't see a riot here. Why are you in riot gear?" DPD then deployed tear gas and what appeared to be a flashbang. I was immediately grabbed by the shoulders and thrown to the ground by an officer. I stood up, disoriented, only to be knocked down again, and upon standing up and starting to stumble towards the intersection of Woodward and John R., I was then shoved from behind by a shield several times. At this point, I tried to lift my hands and shout that I was trying to vacate the area. I was then struck in the legs with a baton. The blows hit the sides and backs of my left knee and the backs of my thighs. The bruises are still there. I did not fall, as I assume was the intention of striking me in those areas that would cause my legs to buckle. I was subsequently tackled to the ground where several officers held me down and pepper sprayed me long after I was already detained. I remember in the moment wondering why. Why was I still being pepper sprayed even though I was face down, hands pulled high behind my back, and could quite literally feel a great amount of weight on my back? The fact that I was able to string together such a thought while still being pepper sprayed shows you how long it was happening. I was pepper sprayed for so long, in fact, that once I was able to speak, I had to ask an officer to remove my face mask because it was soaked in pepper spray. I did have goggles on, but they were rendered completely useless due to the sheer amount of mace that was aimed directly into my face. I heard wails and screams of pain that night that I will not ever forget. I watched medical attention be denied to an individual writhing on the ground in pain. Officers serially misgendered detained protesters. Once I could finally open my right eye enough to take in the scene around me, I truly felt like a zoo animal as I sat on the curb, and the officers milled about on Woodward with their weapons, armored vehicle, horses, shields, masks, helmets, and vests. I saw officers smiling. They looked triumphant. I watched them give each other fist bumps and bro hugs, and they did handshakes like the kinds you have with your friends when you're in grade school. What happened to me is not a unique occurrence, and I really want to highlight that. In fact, what I experienced and witnessed is exactly why marching day in and day out has been so important to me personally. No human being should have to experience what occurred last weekend. Thank you.
Hello, My name is Margaret Hennigy. I'm going to spell that for you guys. Margarethenige. I came out on the first day of protests, hoping for the best. I didn't think, on that very first morning, as I filled my baking soda water bottles, that we'd all still be out here, nearly 100 days later, still filling those bottles and preparing for the worst. Now knowing that we will get the worst every time in terms of the brutality shown by the police. I remember writing a small essay to my parents after only days of being out there, explaining why I was still coming out and why I would continue to be on the streets. I recently had to have a conversation with my parents that paralleled that first one, though this time I felt their hearts break as they finally understood, because this time it had been their child in the emergency room. The truth is that my skin color is a blanket privilege I have, and growing up, my mom didn't have to worry every time my brother or I went out late in a way that a black mother would. And that's why I'm still out here, and why they are finally understanding what it's like to fear for their child's life every single day. On July 10th, I came out with many others because a kid younger than me had been executed by the police, Hakeem Littleton, and we wanted an explanation. The only explanation we received was a line of riot police advancing on the community, licking their lips at the thought of conflict. I tried to help up a friend who went down before I was screamed at and pushed so forcefully that the back of my head bounced back up from the pavement. I know I was trampled from the bruises on my chest as the rest of the riot line moved forward through us, though I blacked out momentarily. My concussion was so bad that I was throwing up and given shots of painkillers and pills to take, and a prescription for an anti-seizure medication. And I know mine wasn't even a standout case. Saturday the 22nd was another big example of the brutality and force DPD shows towards the people they are supposed to protect. I was grabbed and brought down almost immediately after the line moved in on us and dragged on my back, by my feet, down Woodward. I tried to protect my face and head, though still came out with bruises and scrapes all over my body and around my eyebrow with cuts on my nose, my already concussed head throbbing in pain. The abject cruelty shown that night was not just seen in the streets, but also while in the yard of the Detroit Detention Center. Many people know me as the kid who passes out water and snacks during the marches. So when an officer came up with a bag of snacks and asked if I wanted some, I thought it was ironic. He thought it was even funnier when he turned around laughing that they weren't for me. They didn't even give us water. They waited until the morning to go out to those who are waiting outside for us to be released to ask if they have any for us that they could bring in. They couldn't even give us their water, let alone bring us inside. The sun came up and our skin was burning, not only from its rays, but also from its reaction with the chemicals used by the police that still soaked our bodies from the night before. The amount of brutality I've seen by the police on these streets is something that haunts my dreams. Some nights I wake sobbing because I see the brutality and injuries of my family and friends go a step further. I see a friend who is beat down in real life not get up after a baton to the head, or another thrown from a moving police car so hard that they lie there motionless, our medics unable to revive them. I know these nightmares aren't even far out, because with the amount of force and tactics used on a bunch of non-violent protesters, somebody could die. If officers can fist bump and laugh and congratulate each other after inflicting this pain on us, what are they doing while brutalizing the rest of the Detroit community? More specifically, those black and brown lives who don't have the rest of this movement watching from right beside them. Black lives matter. And while all lives should matter, the reality is that all lives don't matter if all lives don't matter. This is an inclusive all, as this is not an exclusive movement. It's a movement built around radical love, and I'm so thankful for this family. Black Lives Matter. Thank you.
My name is Pete Moss. I use they, them pronouns. I'm going to spell it for you. Peatmoss. I'm a named plaintiff, my legal name, Lillian Ellis. I am here. I'm here because I have been arrested in connection with the uprising 4 times this summer. And I want to make clear that the Detroit Police Department is intentionally using trauma as a tool against us expressing our constitutional rights. You know, the trauma of our own bodies being hurt and the trauma of watching our friends suffer. And this is not a new tactic of the police department. This is something that they employ in Black and brown communities in our great city of Detroit regularly. So I'm excited to stand with some people that I care a lot about against this. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Alex Anest. That's AlexAnest. But when I am dressed, as you see me now, I'm known as Lee B. I am a street medic with the 313th Care Collective, and I should not be up here speaking. This is a Black Lives Matter movement, and it's critical that we elevate Black voices. As a white person, I view my role as one of support. That's why I like being a street medic. We work in teams to make sure that everyone who comes out in support of Black lives is safe. We keep people hydrated. We are here if someone passes out from the heat. We treat people for minor scrapes and bruises, and when there is violence, either from police or from people in cars trying to run over law-abiding protesters, we treat them for more serious injuries. I personally have been involved in treating people who have been maced, tear-gassed, assaulted, hit with cars, and bitten. Why am I out here in the streets of Detroit 2 or 3 times per week? Is it because I am an outside agitator who wants to cause chaos in the streets? No, I am here because I believe in a future where racial equality is real and not just a story that white liberals tell each other. I want a different world where police don't have free rein to terrorize people of color and minorities. I am here to keep this movement safe, and I am not here to elevate my own voice. I am here to do my part so that other people can be heard. You see how I am dressed. This is the uniform of a street medic. And any police officer can see that we are street medics when we come out in the streets and we dress like this. We wear this white shirt and use red tape to mark ourselves with crosses so that we are easily recognizable. If someone needs something, they come to us, whether it's water, snacks, a Band-Aid, or anything. And we stay out of the action. We don't want to be injured, because if we get injured, we can't help others. So when the crowd was all together and cops were closing in on them, on Saturday the 22nd, my partner and I were not there. The police actually got to us first and destroyed the triage area we had set up. They threatened to arrest us if we didn't leave, but we were standing on the sidewalk doing nothing illegal, and we stood our ground. And then we watched in horror as the cops moved down the street and tear-gassed the people we try to keep safe. We gathered what supplies we could and moved in closer to start treating the wounded. I thought I was about to spend the next half hour rinsing people's eyes out and moving them to safety. But as I got closer, I realized that I was walking into a war zone, or perhaps more accurately, a zone of illegal assault on police by police on peaceful citizens. All around, people were on the ground with cops on top of them. Some were being beaten, some had already been beaten and were being cuffed. There was screaming and crying and tear gas everywhere. Suddenly, my partner and I saw another street medic being beaten by police officers. She was trying to get away while they hammered her with blows from their batons. As I watched, one of the officers picked her up and bodily slammed her to the ground. This is a woman who I march with regularly. Why were these police attacking a street medic? What reason could they possibly have to harm her? I did not ask myself these questions as I watched her hit the pavement. I didn't ask myself anything. I ran to her side and started trying to help her back to her feet. As I reached her and was attempting to help her up, while at least 2 so-called peace officers continued to beat her, the one who had thrown her down began to strike me with his baton. I felt the first blow or 2 and they hurt, but I was too occupied with trying to help my fellow medic. But then something happened that forced me to stop. The man with a baton who had sworn to protect and serve hit me in the back with the full force of his considerable strength. In one blow, he cracked my rib and collapsed my right lung. I screamed in agony. I could barely breathe, but I didn't let go of my friend until the cop ripped my hand away and dragged me across the pavement. There is a lot more to this story, but as I was marched across the street to sit on the curb with the other prisoners, I noticed that all but 2 of the medics had been arrested. We stay out of the fray, yet somehow we had all been assaulted and taken into custody. In my non-medic life, I am a guitar teacher. I once had an older student who had been a combat medic in Vietnam. Isn't that a dangerous job? I naively asked him one day. He told me that the enemy would often target medics. If you can kill the medic and then wound a few soldiers, that can completely incapacitate a unit pretty easily. Of all the medics that I knew, I'm the only one who came back, he told me. On August 22nd, Detroit police used that tactic in an attempt to incapacitate this movement. They targeted medics and then wounded as many protesters as they could. The thing is, we're civilians, not soldiers, and these are our streets, not a battlefield.
All right. My name is Jay Bass. I'm an organizer with Detroit Will Breathe. I'm a Detroiter, I'm a father, and I'm a black man. Since the beginning, my black life has not mattered in this country, in this state, and even in my very own city. For 25 years in this city, I've been profiled, discriminated against, and made to feel uncomfortable in my own neighborhood. These injustices come at the will of a system that's created to keep blacks impoverished and displaced, and it comes at the hands of government officials and police departments everywhere. In my city, Detroit, Michigan, the blackest city in America, I have a black police chief that doesn't care about my black life. And that's been proven time and time again over these past 30 days. Over these past 30 days, the Detroit Police Department, I'm sorry, not even 30 days, 3 months, 90 days, plus almost 100. Over these past 3 months, they've proven that they don't care about black lives, because the past 3 months, we've been pepper sprayed, tear gas, shot with rubber bullets, brutalized citizens with shields and batons and closed fists. They tackled us, put us in chokeholds, knees on necks. Over these past 3 months, I've been arrested 3 times, brutalized 4 times, and I got ran over by SUV at least one of those times. And the only crime, ironically, that I've committed that's warranted this amount of police brutality and police misconduct and unnecessary force, the only crime I've committed is being out here protesting police brutality and police misconduct and unnecessary force. That's the only thing we've done. And they marched down on us with hundreds of officers in riot gear, riot police who's trained and prepared to inflict pain on anybody out here standing up for black lives, and it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that we live in a world with so much inequality and injustice, and anytime we stand up or speak out about it, we're penalized, we're beaten, we're detained. We won't be silenced anymore. We won't back down. We won't kneel. We won't be submissive to the system anymore. And if that makes me a criminal in James Craig's eyes, then so be it. But I won't continue to sit back and stand around while my people are getting lynched. We gotta fight. It's time to fight. Detroit Will Breathe is not the movement. It's an organization. The movement is the movement for black lives. The movement is the movement for black liberation, true freedom for all. The movement is a movement for accountability and transparency. No more senseless murders and killings justified by a badge. We have to do everything we can to dismantle the racist plot against black lives. And that racist plot against black lives is being upheld by DPD. So we need to limit their abilities ourselves, because obviously Craig, he doesn't have any morals, he doesn't have any boundaries. We know that his allegiance is only to the paycheck and not with the people. So if it's gonna be real justice, we gotta make that justice happen. We need to literally make it illegal for Craig to march down on protesters with armies of hundreds of cops and weapons and military gear when these protesters are unarmed. We need to demilitarize the police so that they literally don't have the means to disperse chemical agents and declare warfare on citizens. We need to defund the police to that $300 million plus budget and put that money back into the communities, which actually would do a better job of preventing crime than DPD has ever done. These are the things that we need to make happen. And that's why this lawsuit is going to be so important, because it's going to allow this movement the means to move forward in the way that we need to move forward in order to actually achieve those goals and actually create everlasting change in this city. It's got to be us. We got to do it, and we're here to do it. Thank you. I'm sorry, J Bass, J-A-E, last name Bass, B-A-S-S.
My name is Nakia Wallace. I'm a Detroit native, a proud graduate of Detroit Public Schools, and a Wayne State graduate. And I'm a co-founder and an organizer with Detroit Will Breathe. And for over 90 days, near 100, there has been a movement throughout this nation led by Black and brown people in defense of Black and brown lives. A movement that has unapologetically said, no longer will we accept the conditions in our communities. We now are going to hold police accountable for the murders and the executions and the brutality that they dispense in our neighborhoods and in our communities. And we're going to hold elected and appointed officials accountable for what their police forces do. We're going to hold them accountable for mass preventable deaths in our communities in the wake of COVID-19. We're going to hold them accountable for mass incarceration, for the fact that there are Black and brown people living in this country in the middle of a pandemic without running water. We're going to hold them accountable for the fact that there is mass homelessness in this country in the wake of a pandemic. The movement has prioritized Black and brown life and deemed it as precious. So no longer can the police kill and terrorize with impunity. No longer is it acceptable for the destruction of public education. No longer is it acceptable for Black and brown people to live in cities without recreation and libraries. No longer is it acceptable for people to call for meaningless reform. This is a movement that envisions something greater. We came out here because we know a world where people have access to health care and to clean water and to housing is possible. And we came out here to make that happen. A world where the police don't get to murder and brutalize. A world where ICE can't snatch babies from their families and terrorize them in cages. In almost every city in this country where this movement has stood up, where young Black and brown people like me have stood up and said, no longer is this acceptable. No longer can we go on the way we've been going on. There's been retribution from the state, carried out and dispensed at the hands of the police, and Detroit is no different. A police force where 70% of the officers live outside of the city, where 85% of commanding officers live outside of the city, is using the justification of where people live as an excuse to brutalize people, to use deadly force. It's unacceptable. This movement has held and will continue to hold Chief James Craig, Mayor Duggan, who is an outside agitator, accountable for these attacks which have been bloody. They've left us with broken bones, bruises, emotional and mental despair. They've hit us with batons. They've ran us over with cars. They've put us in chokeholds. They've dispensed tear gas in residential neighborhoods. They've detained us for over 16 hours on the lawn.